we'll just go around. Okay, we are live. We'll come back to order. And first order of business is something special. This is a personal privilege with the chairman and I. We'll come up here. I think the phone might come pick up. We can get Major Maury to come up here, please. General, if you want to join us, you're welcome to.
Most likely we might find it now.
And we step
Okay.
right here, Mr. Chairman. How about that? I bet
Okay,
you'll be
we'll
right here.
Okay, we'll step up here. We asked Major Maury to attend this meeting, although she's right now not the liaison to the committee. But over the years, she's given such service to the committee, phone calls late at night from us, dumb questions that she has with grace and all of that dignity answered those questions. So the committee assigned a joint resolution from the committee recognizing all that service those years, signed by all the members of the committee. And we normally read these, so it's a joint resolution providing for recognition of Major Jackie A. Maury and expressing deep appreciation for her service as executive officer and legislative liaison in the office of Adjutant General of the Wyoming National Guard and her contributions and dedications to her community and state. Be it resolved by the Joint Transportation, Highways, and Military Affairs Committee of the 66th Legislature of the State of Wyoming. Whereas Major Maury tirelessly served in her role as legislative liaison, responding to committee questions and requests. And whereas Major Maury answered phone calls and emails from the committee, even when they arrived outside of regular business hours. And whereas Major Maury contributed to the committee's understanding of legislation important to the Wyoming Military Department by providing key information for the legislative process while working to improve the lives of the military members she serves. Now therefore be it resolved by the Joint Transportation, Highways, and Military Affairs Interim Committee of the State of Wyoming Legislature that on behalf of the 66th Legislature, we sincerely thank Major Maury for her dedicated service to the great state of Wyoming. And we did this a while ago, signed the 4th day of May. That was the last meeting you left before we could give you this. Of 2022, signed by all the members of the committee and the co-chairman and I. Thank you very much. I know.
She's on salary.
Mr. Chairman, the Senate Transportation and Military Affairs Committee meets at night. And we're one of the only committees that does that anymore. And so Jackie, thank you. Appreciate it very much. All those hours that you spent late at night staying up with us. And so good luck.
Okay, with that, General, your opening remarks, reports, updates, if you would, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Burkhart and Chairman Landon, members of the Joint Transportation Committee, thank you for allowing us to come and discuss with you a couple of important points with us today. I think the first thing we wanted to start off with was a quick video. We'll see if that's a go or not. All right.
Legislature adopted the Code of the West as Wyoming's official state code. Within the code lies the motto of the Wyoming National Guard: "Ride for the brand." Wyoming National Guard. In the early American West, the brand was used as a rancher's trademark that proclaimed ownership of its livestock. To ride for the brand meant to always represent your ranch's brand. In 2010, the Wyoming legislature adopted the Code of the West as Wyoming's official state code. Within the code lies the motto of the Wyoming National Guard, Ride. In the early American West, the brand was used as a ranch's trademark that proclaimed ownership of its livestock. To ride for the brand meant to always represent your ranch's pride with loyalty and honor. The Wyoming National Guard continues to honor this code. This is how we ride tonight. This is how we ride.
Gentlemen, I wonder if our technician in the back would can't go it alone, maybe.
All right, we'll come back to that if and when we get a chance to do that coming on. Yeah. Members of the committee, just wanted to have a couple of updates for you. If you look in your front of you, you'll see a slide, which is slide 4 that says COVID vaccination updates. This will replace slide 4, and we'll have a discussion of that just so that you're tracking when we get there. Secondly, you'll see a data slide, an Army on one side and Air on the other. This will follow later on in the presentation when we talk about the recruiting and retention places. That's where that's going to go. So there's a space holder in your presentation for the data slides. These are those data slides, and so that's where they'll go. Mr. Chairman, just a quick couple of opening remarks as we go through our agenda, and I'll try to be efficient as we go through here. We've got some updates for you just to let you know what the Wyoming National Guard is doing. We've got some intercession study topics that we have. If I were going to surmise it, we've got this state support for recruit and retention of Wyoming National Guard members. We're going to ask the committee to consider and debate 2 bills out of that could potentially help us, one on the accession side and one on the retention side. Next, we'll move to state active duty reform. If you'll remember that we had discussion about medical insurance premiums, we're going to develop that problem statement just a little bit further for you. Again, asking for your consideration and debate on that bill as we go forward. And then lastly, we'll go through the draft bills that the committee agreed to push at the last session and look at those draft bills and get those done. Are any questions about the sort of the agenda and where we're going? Anything, Chairman, that we need to take a look at? No. All right. We go to slide 4.
Oh, Heather.
Yes, Mr. Chairman and General Porter, you would have missed at the end of the morning the fact that the committee intends to move the discussion of Bill Draft 23 LSO-0012, verifying the veteran designation on a Wyoming driver's license, to after this reports portion of the meeting.
Thank you, ma'am. I appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Very quickly, if I'm on slide 5, or excuse me, slide 4, COVID vaccination and updates. This top line discusses the Air National Guard, 1,230 assigned airmen and women. The total that's current with vaccination is 1,146. We have 24 that are overdue. We have 60 that have requested some sort of exemption, whether that's medical or religious, with an overall percentage of compliance in the 93%. If we look at the Army National Guard, 1,526 assigned, of which 1,321 of them have received the vaccination. There's 145 of those that are overdue. There are 60 exceptions, again, either medical or religious, with an overall compliance of 90.50%. Right now, just as an update, the Air National Guard is enjoined from doing any administrative action. There's an ongoing court case at the moment that has prevented really anybody in the Air Force and the Air National Guard from getting any administrative action done towards them until the case is complete. That could be anywhere from 6 months to several years, depending on how that shakes out. So once, for example, let's say an Air National Guardsman has a religious exemption pushed up, it comes back denied, they appeal, it comes back denied. They continue to operate as if they were a normal Air National Guardsmen. They can come to drill, they can get promoted, they can do all those things. We're still wondering about the deployment piece of this, on whether they actually can go overseas or not. That's still somewhat of a gray area. But on the Air National Guard side, there is a court case that's preventing any administrative action to take place. Not the case on the Army National Guard side. However, what is if you recall, the Army National Guard suspense was the 30th of June. We've got 60 exceptions ongoing, haven't received any of those back. We don't know where that is, nor has the Army said what to do with them if they do come back. They've given no guidance yet in terms of what discharge would look like and where that goes. So a little bit of a hiatus in terms of where we sit at the moment on those folks. So I know that's of very much interest to you and the constituents. Let me pause for a moment and take any questions on COVID before we go forward.
Questions? Senator McCune.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think Thomas Massey's working with the Supreme Court to declare an unapproved or an un-FDA approved vaccine unconstitutional. Do you think if they get that done, it's going to put us all in a bad position with what's happened with soldiers so far, or is it still early enough it won't matter? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
General?
Mr. Chairman, Senator McEwen, that was a tough one for me to answer. I don't know the details of Mr. Massey and where that's going. I would say if our system, judicial, legislative, executive, makes a decision about, hey, we need vaccines or we're not going to have vaccines, I think we'll drive on and we'll continue to do what our government has asked us to do. The specifics of which I don't know that I would venture very far out there and tell you on that one, sir, and what that looks like.
Okay. All right, continue, please.
All right, if we go to the next slide very quickly, just give you a quick update on our deployments, both the Army and the Air Guard, rather than going these each by each, because I know you have those in front of you. 77 soldiers and airmen are currently deployed right now in every combatant command, from Southern Command to Africa Command to Northern Command to European Command to Central Command. You've got Army Guards, men and women, both of the Army Guard and the Air Guard, serving in each one of those. I expect, although I don't have any official notification of sourcing yet, that we are going to continue to mobilize. I think we can expect in 23 and 24, we'll have more unit mobilizations coming to us. So I think that's going to be continue as we look forward. I do know that our golf company next October will get deployed, and there's 75 members of our golf company that's planned on that right now. So we do know that that's in place. So we'll see where that goes. The Joint Staff really is, we've got a big exercise next year. It's called Vigilant Guard. It's every year they run a Vigilant Guard. Wyoming, this will be our year to do it. And the intent is really to exercise our domestic response capabilities across the state. It's in collaboration with Wyoming Office of Homeland Security and the governor's office, and virtually every state entity that we can get to. We're going to hold a big exercise in June of next year that exercises our domestic response capabilities. We move to the next slide very quickly. This is just an update.
Co-chairman.
General, sorry for interrupting.
No, sir.
When we talk about members of our Army Guard deploying CENTCOM, can you remind me where that is?
Yes, sir.
General.
Mr. Chairman, Central Command is what we see: Kuwait, Iraq, Syria, Egypt. That's all of the Central Command areas where there is.
Thank you.
Very quickly on slide 6, just that's an update on some of the construction projects we have. The Air Guard Security Forces Combat Training and Maintenance Building is under construction. It's scheduled to complete here next year. Vehicle Maintenance Aerospace Ground Equipment Building is projected for 23, so we're in good spot there. The Army National Guard, you'll remember the Sheridan Vehicle Maintenance Shop. We had some discussion with the community of Sheridan about where we initially had cited it. ultimately decided that wasn't going to be good, and we're going to put it behind the current armory where it's located. We have a little over 3 acres there. It's a little tight, but really at the end of the day, it made most sense for the community and us to put it there. So that's where we're going. Army Guard just finished what we call an innovative readiness training project at Archer Complex in Cheyenne. They built some, extended their ranges and did some upkeep on their ranges. Very good process for us. If I look at the joint says, it says preparing for fire season, but actually we're preparing for the winter season right now. We are currently in fire season. And matter of fact, we had a fire up on Guernsey weekend before last, about 65 acres, all stayed on Guernsey, had excellent response. We had a Black Hawk on it and the state helicopter, plus some county response as well. So, but the team did a great job, kept it in our boundaries, and it didn't become, it was a lightning strike that caused that one. So kind of caught us a little bit by surprise, but the team did a great job. Veterans Commission, just real quick there, as you can see, the 12 of 12 commissioners in place, 7 of 8 VSOs. The other one I think is just about get hired. And the 23rd of August is their next meeting in Du Bois. Let me move on to slide 7 if there's no other questions. Wyoming Cowboy Challenge, we're in.
Representative Ahern.
Thank you. The Air Guard ones, were those built in Cheyenne or in Guernsey?
Those are both in Cheyenne.
Okay, thank you.
Wyoming Cowboy Challenge, just a quick update. We started class 47 just recently, 46, excuse me. They'll graduate in December. We've got 69 cadets currently there, 52 males and 17 females, of which now 85% of them are Wyoming cadets. It is of note that Director Moore, the current director, is going to be retiring in September, so we'll be on the lookout for a new director. If any of you have anybody that might be interested, we should be getting the advertisement out soon. We're going to do a pretty wide and deep search for the next director as we continue to push this program forward. So if anybody's interested, I will certainly get you the information on it, but we are going to be looking for a new director. In the meantime, our Holly Shenefeld, who you may have met, is going to serve as the acting director up there through the end of the class. And then from there, she'll retire. So worked out pretty good. We hosted an open house in Camp Guernsey just on the 6th of August, just to, again, make sure that the community has an opportunity to talk with us and we engage with them. It was pretty well done, but I think what we decided is we had a lower turnout than we wanted. We need to sync it up with something that's really happening in Platte County there, and whether that's a duck race or something else going on to get some folks out there. So we'll do a little better job on that. We did get funding to build new barracks in Guernsey. That's our next 2 MILCON projects. And we also have an ammunition supply point administration building, which we briefed this committee before, that's squared away. Probably the new information that you haven't had before is the firehouse. We did get design funds to build a new firehouse in Guernsey, which is pretty important to us to get that done. So if we're going to combine some equipment storage, air traffic control, and firehouse into one building, and that'll significantly upgrade our ability in capabilities in Camp Guernsey. So it's not a done deal yet, but we did get design funds, so that's helpful. We get going. All right. Any questions on this so far? If not, let me turn it over to Mr. Shepard and folks to talk to you very quickly about the skilled nursing facility. I think they're going to join us remotely due to some other responsibilities that he had.
Heather, can you let them in? Heather, I have Brian Scranton and no, I don't show Shepard. He's welcome to join us.
Yep. And if it doesn't work out, sir, I can brief those two.
Franz. Okay.
Okay.
I'd say that. Yeah, admit both of them.
This is Ryan Scranton. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, Ryan, very loudly.
Good afternoon, members of the commission. Ryan Scranton with the State Construction Department. I can give a brief update for you on the skilled nursing facility if you'd like.
Please proceed.
Well, construction is progressing along well. We have a substantial completion date of mid-October. We have a ribbon cutting scheduled for the 20th of October. As far as construction efforts go, site work is in full swing. Have most of, if not all of the site concrete installed. They're getting ready to do the asphalt paving and the landscaping work. As far as interior cottage work, in cottage 3, the one that's furthest along, getting finished trim installed. They've got flooring, walls, and ceilings done. They've got the kitchen equipment in. Really just trying to wrap cottage 3 up. Cottage 2 shortly behind cottage 3, getting the kitchen equipment in cottage 2, working on the flooring and finishing up some paint there. And as you know, cottage 1 is the largest lag, but not too far behind. A lot of casework going on in there and getting the trim and finishing up the floors and walls there as well. So given the circumstances, things are progressing nicely, and it's been a very good project. So with that, I will stand for any questions.
Any questions on where we stand with the skilled nursing facility? So Ryan, you said ribbon cutting in October. And I think the last time we talked, we were up there and looked at the facility, and it looks fantastic. But you seem to be a little behind the schedule. We talked about ribbon cutting in August. So trouble with getting equipment, materials, that sort of thing? Supply chain issues?
Mr. Chairman, no. I can speak to that, and you are correct. The timeline, whether that be substantial completion or ribbon cutting, has slid to the right, and we haven't experienced too many material supply chain issues. The reason for the shift, primarily, we reached a point in the construction where we were able to release some of the contingency funds and do some of the additional work that not in the original construction contract that the owner may have wanted or desired. That additional work has extended the length of the project. And, we have experienced on the other side of the material issues is the labor issue. And I think we've worked through that the entirety of the project, but just getting the people there has been difficult. So, big push to get it done before it cools off, and get the Department of Health and the residents in there.
Okay, great. Representative O'Hearn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Building will be done by then. How about manning it? I see your direct care workforce recruitment. Can you expound on that a little bit, please?
Ryan?
Mr. Chairman, Representative O'Hearn, I don't feel comfortable speaking to the labor and staffing issue, but I may allow the Department of Health to speak to that.
Franz, do you want to address that question? I believe you're on.
Yes.
You just have to unmute yourself.
Good afternoon.
Oh, there you are.
Mr. Chairman. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Excellent. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Co-Chair, members of the committee. My name is Franz Fuchs. I'm the Chief Policy Analyst at the Department of Health. We're working on this project for a few years now. Just a quick update on the manning. We have a slide for you. I don't know if the military department can pull it up. I can also share a PDF here on my screen, but this is in the final deck. I think it's slide 11. And so just the update here
Okay.
is
Yeah, we have
unfortunately not too much new to report. We are working through some bureaucratic processes right now with Medicare, Medicaid certification, as well as state licensure. There are some wickets there that have to be timed with substantial completion, like the surveys. So in some way, in many ways, the certification and licensure, as well as the staffing of the facility, is contingent upon that construction completion date. And so all our planning has kind of been around that mid-October timeframe. So we do have consultants on site. They are helping our staff get through those wickets. We don't anticipate any issues with the licensure certification processes. With recruiting, we have been phasing that. So right now we are currently actively recruiting nurse leadership positions. So that's the director of nursing and the minimum data set coordinator. So those are two high-level nursing positions for the facility that are required. And they will have, the reason we're starting with the leadership first and these sort of, I believe there's a maintenance position as well as possibly the activities coordinator, maybe starting recruitment soon, is that when you recruit direct care staff, you really need them to start working with clients. And if the facility is still under construction, that's not really a good thing for retention or for just general strategy for recruiting direct care staff. So we plan to begin that recruitment in September and really time that for that substantial completion date in mid-October. As far as census goes, and I'm sorry, I can't really see anyone. If anyone has any questions, Mr. Chairman, I'd hope you'd stop me if anyone has any questions on the staffing component before I have a quick update on the clients.
Senator Anderson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Franz, for the last two meetings, I've asked for that one-page update you had that listed all the personnel needs and how many you had hired. You know, a year ago, you didn't have any hired, but maybe have some of those filled now. Could you please have that at our next meeting in November or before, so we know exactly what you have? When Buffalo got that facility, I asked all the Senate to help with staffing it, even if some of the people came from their organizations. And I'd like to prove up on that and make sure that they're following through. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Other questions? Oh, go ahead.
Oh, Mr. Chairman, Senator Anderson, I could actually show you that slide if you like, but it's not very informative. It just has zeros in the filled column right now. I'm happy to share that right now or provide to the committee. But right now it just shows kind of the requirements for those 36 positions, and then the status update is we don't have any hired yet. But I'd be happy to keep that slide going for future meetings and when it's informative.
Senator, do you want to see that slide now or just wait?
No, just wait.
Okay. Okay, Ryan, we can wait on that one, or Franz, whoever answered that question. We don't see either one of you on the screen right now. So, okay, I think that takes care of Veterans Commission issues.
Yes, sir. I had one final slide and then I think we will move to, this is on slide 12. Just a point of information for you. Senator Barrasso and in conjunction, the delegation from Nevada put forth an act to, when the United States Air Force starts to put together its basing criteria for the C-130J, that they wanted to add the MAFS mission, the Mobile Airborne Firefighting System, to it. Nevada is the other Guard wing that has the MAFS, platform. The intent is to try to get all three Guard wings, California, Nevada, and Wyoming, on the same C-130J aircraft so that we can rainbow cruise. Our MAFS systems are the same. It all looks the same. Right now, California is the only one that has the MAFS, or the C-130J. I just got a copy of the draft criteria yesterday, and initially it looks like MAFS is going to be on it. So that bodes well, I think, for us in Nevada. And we certainly appreciate Senator Barrasso and his team's support, and along with Nevada, to really push this issue to make sure that Wyoming, who fly, that mission is the most dangerous one that the C-130 does, that we have the most capable aircraft to do that. So just wanted to point that out to you, that we're still going down the C-130J acquisition. Probably start to see that final criteria come out maybe by the next committee meeting we have. I may be able to give you an update on that. And then I think some decisions probably in the spring of where those next set of 16 Js will go.
Okay.
All right. And Mr. Chairman, I think you wanted to move up one of the bills from the agenda?
Yes. Yes, I did. So we're going to, at this point, move up Bill Draft 23 LSO 0012. Finding it in my stack here. Verifying the veteran designation on a Wyoming driver's license. So let's see. We have the bill draft. We've lost all of our support. But if you want to go through it, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, Chris Smith, Senior Counsel for the Wyoming Military Department. I am prepared to go through the bill.
Please.
All right, sir. In front of you, draft 23 LSO 0012. As the committee may recall, we, in coordination with WYDOT, the current statute allows veterans to have a V placed on their driver's license to designate that they're a veteran. Part of that process required WYDOT to get certification from our Veterans Commission that the people were actually a veteran. WYDOT has a great deal of experience at this point reading DD Form 214s and the various other kinds of documents, and they felt very confident we no longer needed to have that certification by the Veterans Commission. It just is an extra step. It takes extra time. When we looked at the statute and LSO prepared this bill, we also realized that the current statute talks about putting a V on the license. With the newer driver's license, the Real ID license, it's actually the word veteran. So what the bill in front of you has, it's 3 pages, but it's really only 2 because the 3rd page says end on it. And if I could direct the committee's attention to page 2, we have 2 provisions in Title 31 that we're changing. So the first provision, the change begins on line 6 through 8, and it essentially deletes the certification by the Veterans Commission. And on line 7 allows documentation issued by the armed forces for WYDOT to just look at that documentation. We have a great relationship with WYDOT. If they have a question, they always call the Veterans Commission for clarification. If they get a form from the military that's weird, that they're not used to. So that this section right here, the first part of on page 2, takes out the Veterans Commission, allows WYDOT to carry forward, streamlines the process. It seems like a good thing. The second half on page 2 is the veteran designation on the actual license in 31.7.141. And here on line 15, we're not certifying, we're just documenting. And then the real change is down on line 20, which allows WYDOT to put a V or the word veteran on the license. So essentially it just codifies in the statute, corrects the statute to what the current practice is. And that's literally all the bill does. So it's really a housekeeping bill. It streamlines the process for our veterans, and it allows WYDOT to continue to do what they're already doing.
Okay.
With that, sir, I'll stand for the committee's questions.
Any questions for Mr. Smith? Questions? Okay. Director Reiner, do you have any comments, or Mr. Rossetti on the change on the bill?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Our comment is this makes sense to us, and Mr. Rossetti and his crew are in full support. And so we see this makes it's good efficiency for us in state government.
All right. Even a shorter answer, Mr. Rossetti. Okay. Yeah, it was a thumbs up. Okay. Thank you. Is there any public testimony on 23 LSO 0012? Anyone in the room? Anyone on Zoom? Okay. Heather, you.
Mr. Chairman, sorry, I had to step out for just one moment. So, and then you were so fast to get to this bill. The one question that we had as it was going through the review and drafting is that on page 2, documentation issued by the Armed Forces of the United States is very broad, but we think that it was the committee's or the military departments or both desire to have it broad. But the question was, does from some reviewers at LSO, does the committee or anyone need that to be more specific, like specifically that discharge paper, the that one, the DD 214 or something like that, or if there could be other types of, some other type of documentation. This, another place in statute is fairly broad, so that's where this came from, but that is just one consideration if anyone wanted to. I was going to bring it up when I went through the bill.
Mr. Smith, comment on that?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We did intentionally want it to be broad. Historically, it's almost always a 214 if you have active duty experience. But for guard members, we have what's called an NGB Form 22, which is a different form that if you never did anything on active duty and you just were a guard member for a period, you would still qualify as a veteran, but you'd have a different piece of paper than a 214. And our desire always with LSO is to try to make our statutes future-proof. So documentation issued seems to make sense to me, because if they ever change the form number, we're still good.
Okay. Senator Pappas.
I agree on the broad definition of this. Mr. Smith knows that there was some cases in the past where people have missed out on things because the federal government hadn't come through with forms, and so being broad is better for us.
Without objection, we'll just leave it alone. Okay. Leave it as is. Okay. So, short bill. Moved bill. Second by O'Hearn, moved by Pappas. Just 2-page bill, any amendments? Representative Burt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just something quick on page 2 on line 19. It looks like it could just be a little bit of confusion on there. It says the identification shall be in the form of a V or veteran. Could we just simplify that and say something like the identification shall state veteran printed instead of having either a V or a, I don't know if we need that in there because of existing license that might have the V, or we could just figure out something simpler.
Mr. Rossetti, comments?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Burt, to a certain degree, I think it is probably a policy decision for you guys to make, but this is very similar to that issue that we have with the word color that we discussed yesterday on our driver's license. The V or the veteran gives us options. If you just go to veteran and something else happens, then we'd have to come back and look at an adjustment to this statute.
And Mr. Rossetti, just a question. We already do have the ability to put a V on there. So some veterans could already have a V on their license, correct?
That is correct, Mr. Chairman.
So, okay, is there is that an amendment? Representative Burt, question? Okay. Okay. All right. Representative Stivert? No? Okay. Okay. Just wanted to let us know. All right. Any other amendments? No. Question having been called. Heather, please take the roll.
Senator Anderson. Senator Furphy. Senator McEwen. Senator Pappas. Representative Baker. Representative Burt. Representative Henderson. Representative McGuire.
Excused.
Representative Obermueller. Representative O'Hearn. Representative Romero Martinez.
Absent.
Representative Stivar. Chairman Burkhart.
Aye.
Co-chairman Landon.
Aye.
That passed.
Thank you. Thank you for bearing with us and moving that up. And Director, thank you and your staff for hanging with us a little extra time to get that out of the way. Hope you get back to Cheyenne and, well, it's still daylight. Okay. Enjoy the construction zones.
Yeah. Go hard.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So, General, please continue. I think we're now discussing state support for recruitment and retention.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I could refer the committee back to slide 1313. What you'll see, I'm going to turn over to Major Hinkle to talk through, like I said, potentially the consideration of two topics for sure. One on the accession side and one on the retention side that this committee graciously had us take a look at. So let me turn that over to Major Hinkle and we'll go from there. Thank you.
Thank you, General Porter. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Major Karen Hinkle. I am the staff judge advocate out at the 153rd Airlift Wing, so part of your Wyoming Military Department. And I'm really thrilled to be able to talk to you about some of the recommendations that the working group and some of our team members came up with in order to talk about how we can, as the state, improve recruiting and retention efforts throughout the Wyoming Military Department. Slide 14 is really just sort of a brief summary of how this issue came up. And so if you recall at our last meeting, we had discussed a proposal to authorize an appropriation to give us a small incentive payment whenever we had a successful referral of a new military member made to the department. And as a part of that discussion, the suggestion was made to form a working group committee to further explore and discuss different ideas on how we could work together between the state and the agency on those efforts. That committee consisted of Representative Henderson and Representative Stivar. And then as far as the military members, it was myself, Major Johnson, and then several of our subject matter experts, both on the Army and Air side, who are directly involved in recruiting and retention efforts. Moving to slide 15, really what we want to do is give you just a little bit of a background on kind of the current situation facing the military department. Our strength goal across the department is always 102%. And the idea for that is because if you ever just cap your strength at 100% of what your authorized manning is, you're not going to always have people who are ready to deploy at a moment's notice for health issues or pregnancy or job transfers or new folks who are getting spun up in skills. So it's always, the goal is always to have more than we're allotted. Unfortunately, as we've seen in the past couple of years, we are across the nation and also here in Wyoming, seeing a decline in the number of people that we are able to assess into the Wyoming Military Department. And that's across the country and across the services. There's a lot of reasons for that. And it's partly because there are issues in finding qualified applicants. Either their testing scores are too low for admission, they are having too many medical issues, so they can't get through that initial medical screening, which we call MEPS. Frankly, there's a lot of mental health issues that seem to be plaguing our younger generation, and so they're not able to assess because of those. Criminal records increases have been an issue historically as well. And then, of course, the favorite topic of the COVID vaccination mandate, that also has impacted some accessions. And finally, and this isn't on the slide, but there's just a general sense that there is a decreased propensity to serve, right? The cultural values may have shifted, and they're sort of reflected in that ideological divide that the country seems to be facing. If you move.
Senator McCune.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just quick question. Do you have off the top of your head what the difference between your MTO and your actual TO&E is? The difference, just even a percentage figure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
General.
Mr. Chairman, Senator, clarify it for me just a little bit more, if you would. The difference between, are we talking about assigned and what our MTO strength or our force structure allowance is? I'm having trouble tracking the question. Over.
Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There's a TO&E for every type unit. And then there's a modified TO&E for what they have for strength in the end. For example, in the Army, it's about 8% difference. They cut back, and I was just curious if the Guard models after that or if it's less. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
General.
Mr. Chairman, Senator McCune, you recall correctly that is the case. What I would term now is force structure allowance, which is the aggregate number than what our assigned soldiers are in the Army side. But you're right, there is a small delta between what the go to war number of people were versus the modified table, and it's probably roughly 8%, as you said.
I'm old, so I don't understand. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm old, so I don't understand a lot of the new terms, but I was just wondering if that's kept up historically, if it was still the same. So I appreciate your answer. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Was there a need for an answer? Okay. Do we cover it? Okay. All right. Okay,
Yes, sir. It's about that. It's about that same percentage.
continue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to go to the next two slides, and I believe that is 15 and 16, if I'm correct. These are two charts, and what these represent, this is really intended to be kind of a visual depiction of the challenges that we're facing in terms of where our numbers are and where they need to be. So if you look at the left side, first off, the purple line that goes all the way across, that represents just our 100% in strength based on the manning that's authorized to us on the federal side. And again, the goal is never to just be at 100%. We really want to be higher than that. The green line represents where we are in strength wise in a given fiscal year, starting with fiscal year 18 and then moving out to the future as we get into the dashed lines. What you see is that, at least in this first slide, right, from fiscal year 18 to 20, we really had made some good progress on getting toward that 100% in strength, and this was specific to the Army. Once we hit fiscal year 20, and we know that that's when a lot of things shifted in the political environment, we started to see a decrease in those accessions. And right now, so for fiscal year 22, we're really right above that 95% line. The concern that we have, right, this is a little bit of a best case scenario based on our current data right now, and it's not based on issues with our recruiting team. Our recruiting team, as I'll show you in a little bit, is performing incredibly well in our market share across when we are comparing across the country. But what this represents is just the reality of the numbers that we're able to bring in and assess from the state of Wyoming and across the local areas where we tend to recruit from. This number does not reflect what we might lose depending on what happens with the COVID folks who are going through religious accommodations or other aspects of that process who may no longer be able to continue to serve with us. And if those folks are no longer allowed to continue to serve, we anticipate that that number may go down to as low as 85% of our in strength. So you'll see a pretty significant dip, and we didn't put that on this slide because it's not where we're at today, but we are concerned that that may be where we are shortly in the future. As we look towards the right, the question is, how are we going to get back toward 100, and how are we going to get over to 100? The gray line represents where we think we will be if we are able to have a 2% increase in accessions based on where we are today. And that green line that's dashed represents a 1% increase in strength over each year. Our estimates right now, based on the success of our recruiting teams, is that we're looking at more realistically that 1% line in terms of what we're able to assess over our current numbers. And that's just reflected in kind of the reality of the situation across the country. If you turn the page to the next slide, you'll see a very similar picture for the air. Historically, the air has been a little bit lower in terms of overall in strength. We peaked out there right around 95% in fiscal year 21. That was a banner year for us in terms of accessions. But we too are feeling the impacts potentially from losing folks who are pending religious accommodation for COVID vaccinations. And so we anticipate that if those folks choose not to get vaccinated or however that court system plays out, we don't know yet. But if they're no longer able to serve, we think we'll probably end up around 85% in strength for us as well. And again, the gray line represents that 2% growth, and the blue line is the 1% growth. And so in any case, you can see we're not looking at getting to our in strength until fiscal year 29. Now, those current projections take into account federal benefits and marketing strategies and our current recruiting initiatives that we already have access to. And so as we use those resources, that's that kind of 1% to 1.5% growth that we're anticipating currently having. The challenge as we see it is that's going to take a long time, probably about 8 to 10 years before we're able to get back up to 100% in strength. So the efforts that we're looking at with you today are intended to help us move that up by hopefully at least another percent, so we can shorten the gap between when we are going to hit our bottom peak, whatever that is, to when we can get back to that 100% in strength. So we don't expect any initiative here to be the massive fix all, solve all, but any amount incrementally that we can help bridge that gap and increase that percentage will help us shorten the time where we're low, basically. Unless there are any questions, we'll move to slide 17. When we think about why people join the service, it has shifted over time, but the things that we have identified in the past, I would say probably 3 to 5 years, are really focused in 2 category areas. One is people want a better life, and whatever that means to them, usually it's related to job security or benefits or finances or what have you, skills, education, training. That other top category of 33% is school benefits and school payments. And the reason I highlight these to you, gentlemen, is because those are target areas where if we can continue to make impacts there, we believe that that is the most likely to generate increases in our recruiting efforts. If we move to the next slide, this is slide 18. What this does is it helps give you a picture of some of the additional challenges we're facing in the recruiting aspects in particular. What this slide does is it shows market share for the Wyoming Army National Guard recruiting compared to Army, Marine Corps, Air Force, and Army Reserve across the country. The red line shows 41%. And just to be very clear, what that means is we, as the Wyoming Army National Guard, have captured 41% of the market of all new people in Wyoming who are joining a military service. The only thing that's been kept out of that number is the Air National Guard. So our recruiting team is doing a fantastic job when it comes to attracting applicants. The problem is that the applicant pool has shrunk significantly. So in fiscal year 2019, the DoD as a whole from the state of Wyoming attracted 565 applicants. In fiscal year 22, the DoD as a whole attracted only 241 applicants from Wyoming. And of that 241, we in the Army National Guard got 41% of them. And so that's really the issue, right? How do we get more of those young people or people in that recruitable age to want to join our service? And so one last kind of background slide for you, if you'll permit me, and that's the next page, 19. This gives you a little bit more information specifically to retention. So again, that goal is always 102%. And so there's a balance, right? You want to bring in new folks, to bring in those new experiences and build that talent pool early on. But then you also want to be able to keep people that you have that experience and that you can grow them and get them into your senior leadership ranks over time. There's a lot of different reasons why people leave service, and that's a very individual thing. But in general, it falls into 4 categories that we've identified in the state. One, obviously, is folks are going to reach the end of their career and they're going to choose to retire. Sometimes that retirement can come a little earlier than they may have wanted. And one of the reasons for that is because they are finding difficulty finding full-time jobs in a reasonable commuting distance from wherever they happen to be stationed. For the Army Guard, of course, there's armories all over the state. For the Air Guard, we're located in Cheyenne, but it's been an issue identified across both of our service branches. So that is an issue. Some of these are outside of our control, right? So if there are health issues, obviously, we're not going to be able to identify ways to fix that problem. But when we get to number 3, if they decline to re-enlist because their benefits are used up, that tells us that that's a meaningful retention criteria for them because that's something that they're actively looking for. And so there's probably opportunities that we can explore there, and we'll have a specific proposal targeting one of those efforts here in just a moment. And then again, as you see in number 4, there's this interstate transfer process. So that's usually somebody who's part of our guard, but then is asking to transfer to a different guard unit in a different state. And a lot of times the reason for that is because, again, they're having difficulty finding jobs within the state or close within a commuting distance, or their spouse is having difficulty and they've got a job somewhere else. The reasons they stay are also very important. And so on the right side of that, really the number one reason that we see consistently across both branches are, again, those incentive payments. That's a little tricky for us, right? Because a lot of our private companies are now capturing a lot of the incentives that we historically have relied on. And it's frankly becoming difficult to compete with the tuition because private companies are now providing the similar tuition reimbursements. So these are some challenges that we're honestly going to have to face as we work through this problem together. Many of these other things are things that are difficult, I think, to address on a legislative level. But those things that drive people to stay, or frankly, they like it, right? It's a good quality of life. They like the structure that it provides. They want to continue to serve once they kind of get that bite, like me, right? You decide you like it and you can't imagine doing anything else. They really appreciate the education benefits, the leadership climate, and they love that sense of community and belonging. I think that, and this is Major Hinkle's personal opinion here, that sense of community and belonging is also something that as a long-term initiative, the state can look to capture as we kind of grow this program. Unless there are any questions on the background, what I'd like to do next is move to the first of our two proposals. All right, seeing none, then I will continue. On slide 20, and this is a revisit of the initial proposal that we spoke with you back in the early spring. We have identified, and this is a program that other states have adopted. The idea is to temporarily fund incentive payments whenever someone makes a successful referral. The idea is that the best single source of new recruits are people who are currently serving. That peer-to-peer networking has proven to be incredibly beneficial, and anecdotally on the air side, we had a very small event where we called it Bring a Friend. The idea was that if folks brought a friend and got them to sit in front of a recruiter and got the chance to show off what we do on a day-to-day basis during drill, it gets people pumped up about it. And sure enough, in that day, that really half a day, we got, I want to say, this is completely off the top of my head, but I think we got 13 successful leads generated out of that. And that's something that would take months typically on an outside event. So that was a huge, huge bonus for us. And really all we did was we said, hey, we'll, give you a pass for part of a drill shift. That tells you, I think, or at least gives you an idea of the power of that peer-to-peer marketing and networking. And that's really what this incentive is designed to maximize, right? So younger people really need money. Money talks to them. They're starting their lives. The idea is that at what seems like maybe a small payment of $500 for successful referral, for someone like me, where I'm a little bit more established in my career, maybe that isn't as meaningful. But for an 18-year-old who's just starting out, wow, that's a car payment. That's kind of a big deal. And so we think that might actually drive a lot of folks to kind of get in friendly competition and bring a lot of their friends and come join the service. The estimated cost per biennium is based on whether we are looking at bringing in any new member and providing that referral, or if we just wanted to limit it to enlisted members. But really, it's just to kind of give you a sense of the costs. If we do the maximum program, and based on what we think we're assessing this year at a maximum of 350 sessions across the Wyoming Military Department, we're looking at a cost of $350,000. Sorry about the little typo there. And that's for the biennium. The recommendation from us on this is, if this is something the committee's interested in, is we would look at this as probably a 3-year program. So we'll do kind of the end of this year and then the next full biennium. And then we can look and see whether it's actually having a meaningful impact. If it is, then we can reassess. And if it's not, then that's a program that wouldn't necessarily need to be continued. The idea is to see if it actually has a drive and like an actual calculable increase in our recruiting efforts over that period of time, because really we're just trying to get over the bathtub slump that we're in at the moment. Any questions for me at this point?
Questions? Okay.
Okay.
So that's Major, that's one idea. Does the idea take legislation? Do we have to put this in statute or somehow fund this? Is that where we're going?
Mr. Chairman, yes, this would require an appropriation for the funds.
Yeah. So I guess we can put that in the budget bill. And I know that everyone is looking at starting to look at supplemental budgets. I guess the governor has requested those that the agencies start. So I guess that's where you'll put this, is in the supplemental budget.
Mr. Chairman, I had not considered putting in the supplemental budget because of the work that we've done here in the committee. I don't know that that's not something that we couldn't do, but that's just not where my head was at, sir.
Okay, so separate in the budget bill as an amendment, is it? Oh, put it as a separate bill appropriation. Okay. So I think that's what before we go to the next topic, I want to resolve this one. So Senator McCune.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm looking at your slide. I don't quite understand. You're assuming 440 sessions per year at a $500 bonus amount. Wouldn't that be 220,000? Thank
Major.
you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Or Senator McCune, we, I think, have an outdated slide in front of you. We've actually readjusted the numbers based off of our current accessions. So the number that we would expect to assess is actually closer to 350. That's based off of where we're at this fiscal year. And then we've added about 10% to that. And so we're looking at about 350 individuals. And then if we calculate that out for a 2-year period, it ends up to be about 350,000. Sorry for the confusion. It is.
So committee, I think we're looking at a separate bill with appropriation in it for the department. Comments? Mr. Co-Chair.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I'm noticing that we've got a couple of other suggestions and we may be able to lump this all into one piece of legislation and not just that
Okay.
appropriation.
Okay, well, let's
So-
hold off then and we'll look at all of them and then decide what we need. So that's proposal 1. Major, I guess go ahead to proposal 2.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So on slide 21, you'll see proposal 2, and we broadly categorize this as enhancing existing state education and tuition benefits. So as I'm sure you all know, we already have a state tuition assistance program that's been codified in legislation. The current plan right now limits participation for individuals. So first, it requires a 6-year service commitment just for informational purposes, but it really only allows a member to receive tuition assistance for one program. And so that's the language that's used, one program that leads to a certificate or a terminal degree. That can work a couple different ways. So someone could have, for example, start an associate's, and then as long as they stay in the same program of study, end up with a bachelor's or potentially a master's program in that. But if they wanted to shift to a different program, they would not be eligible for tuition assistance anymore under the way it's currently structured. There's no option as well to transfer the benefit to spouse or dependents, and the GI Bill does allow this. So that exchange requires an additional service commitment on behalf of the member. And once they agree to that commitment, then that education benefit is able to transfer. And that is potentially a really important benefit for a lot of your folks who either have already come in with benefit. And I'll just give an example of myself, right? So I've come into service. I have a Juris Doctorate degree, which is a terminal degree. I don't really have a desire to go get anything else because I like my degree. But if I had a spouse who wanted to get an additional education or needed a master's or needed a bachelor's, it would be very meaningful for someone like me and to be able to offer that as a benefit of my service, because otherwise it's just sort of benefits out there that doesn't have any meaningful impact for me. And so that's just an illustration for you. The proposals here could look like a couple different things. And these are the suggestions that we had thought of on the agency side in exchange for an additional service commitment, because the idea is to keep them serving with us longer, that we would either authorize transfer of that unused benefit to a spouse or a dependent, or we could authorize and provide funding for individuals to obtain a second degree if it's in a different course of field than what they had already done. And so those are meaningful stories that do impact individual members. And in fact, we've got an officer that's got a bright future on the Army side who's indicated in no uncertain terms that if we're not able to assist in getting additional education for him, he's not going to be able to continue to serve. And he's probably not a one of. And so if you're asking whether this actually might influence some folks to stay, I think the answer is that yes, at least some it would. I don't have a number for you, but it is an important benefit. Just to kind of throw out there food for thought, it sounds like New Hampshire's governor recently signed legislation that did allow that transfer of their state benefits to spouse or dependents. So there's some precedent out there in some other states that are attacking this problem in a similar way. And again, the goal here is to really incentivize them to stay past that first term of service, keep them past that first 6 years.
Mr. Co-Chair.
So Major, any discussion about that 6-year service commitment? Are we comfortable with that remaining where it is? Am I reading that correctly, that it currently requires the 6-year commitment and no plans from the subcommittee to say we should increase that, decrease it?
Mr. Chairman, thank you, Mr. Chairman and Mr. Chairman. So the initial 6-year commitment obviously would stay in place. The agency's recommendation would be to require an additional service commitment because that's that piece that really helps us with the retention aspect. So if we were just to provide it without that, I don't know that it would meet the goal of encouraging people to retain. Now, I think the length of that service commitment is something that is, debatable.
Questions? Okay. So I think you had a couple more ideas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And then, so moving to slide 22, and so we do have some additional topics. I don't know that these are ready yet for further legislative action, but there are some other topic areas that I think are at least worth discussing. And one that has resounded across military department members for many years is improving access to state residency benefits for our members. Now, while it's desirable to have as many Wyoming residents serve in the Guard as possible, the reality is that we have members serving from many, many states, and particularly on the air side, because we have a very unique set of missions, we attract people from across the globe. That's actually a great thing, right? Because we're bringing people into this community and who knows, maybe we'll attract them to stay here as long-term residents. And one of the things that folks really get excited about are the things that make Wyoming. And that's either access to hunting or vehicle registration rates or property tax exemptions. This kind of recruiting or incentive tool is something that we think is worth further study. And so the recommendation is to allow the working group to look at this more fully and consider it kind of in the future as additional options that we might want to explore. If you move to the next slide as well on 23, just to summarize, we would really like to kind of get the committee's guidance on the proposal 1 and 2. So that's that referral payment and then the education benefits. And then to conclude on slide 24, we would also very much like to request that we continue the working group. We feel that that had a really great impact on generating some ideas, and we've got some interesting longer term economic proposals that we're kind of throwing out there. But I think there's more that we can look at on a longer term kind of scale to address these as the challenges continue to come. So that would be our request. And specifically, we would ask to look at the access to the state residency benefits in that working group, and then re-evaluating that combat vets tuition program funding level. And so that's something we would ask to go back specifically to the working group as well. Pending any questions.
Okay. General, any follow-up comments?
Mr. Chairman, I think, hey, thanks, Major Hinkle. That was a great job. I think we're back to, sir, is proposal 1. We would really like for the committee to debate and hopefully authorize us to work with LSO to draft a bill that would allow us to provide the temporary incentive payments. And then the second one was this existing state tuition education benefits. Mr. Chairman, I believe where you were going, I think that second extension that we'd look like would be 6 years. That gets most of our members to the 12-year mark. That we think starts to be they'll be more inclined to stay to the 20-year mark at that point. So that's kind of where our head's at around that. And that's pretty standard with the extensions. Usually it's either a 3-year extension or a 6-year extension. And I think where we're going to go is the 6-year mark is what allow you to transfer those benefits. Just to clear that up. That's all I had, sir.
Right. Committee? Representative Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Major, for your help, and Representative Stiver as well. We had some good discussion, very good discussion. I think this is a good point to maybe think about next steps. I don't think it hurts to have something ready for us to look at in November. The point was made about the getting people to stay and commit to the long term. Now, during the discussion, we talked about the proportion of residents versus non-residents. And in the one case, in the Army, if I'm correct, the Army Guard is higher in terms of its retention, but it has more Wyoming residents. And I don't see any need to curtail or get in the way of non-residents at this point, because everyone's welcome, right? Move to Wyoming, come on. But there's something there that suggests to me that with the right mix in the toolbox for these folks to recruit and have these discussions, going back to the opportunity that came with the 13 positive leads in the one-day event. So I think we're on to something, and I think it's worth pursuing. So my recommendation to the committee would be to enable the legislation to be drafted so we'd have something to look at and debate in November.
Senator Pappas, you look like you wanted to speak.
I agree. I was just going to make a motion that we draft a bill to include both proposal 1 and proposal 2. I don't know whether do we need legislation to continue the working group? I think that's
I think that's more of
decision
a volunteer service and
of the
committee, and I would ask
And I agree with
the
that
two
as well.
representatives to continue
So my
if they
motion would
wish.
be then just to bring a draft bill back to us in November that would include both proposal 1, proposal 2 issues.
Okay, and seconded by Senator Landon. So Heather, can you craft these into one bill, or would it take 2 bills?
Mr. Chairman, I don't want to give a definitive answer until I'm looking at the statutes and what's all involved, but it seems like the one topic, the single category could be recruitment and retention.
Okay.
And it seems like that could be the case. As I dig in, that may change, but it seems like that is possible, is at
All right.
a glance possible.
Okay, and just for clarification, I will go back. So with the incentive payments, I think we will look at a $350,000 appropriation. Now, General Major, is that per year or is that for a biennium?
Mr. Chairman, that's biennial
Okay.
cost.
Okay, so you can indicate that in it too, that it's a biennial cost. And I'm thinking, while you say, you may not need it in the future, that we just then include that in the standard budget for the department. What do you think? If we can swing it, okay,
Okay, so Mr. Chairman, would that actually be 175 for the remaining year of the biennium and then say that is the intent of the legislature that it be included in their standard budget?
yes. Yes,
Mr. Chairman, the only caution or the only hesitation I would have is that Major Hinkle rightfully pointed out that it'll give us an opportunity for a couple of years to see how that program's working and to fold that into the standard budget before we get a good look at any results off of that. I wonder if we might want to just.
okay,
That's
so.
my only caution.
Right. So how about we do it for the remaining year in this biennium? And then just add in just the next biennium. That's 3 years, and I believe Major Hinkle said they would have an idea after 3 years of the efficacy of the program.
Mr. Chairman, I think that's right on. Thank you.
Okay, Heather, is that clear?
I believe so, Mr. Chairman. I think that it will be an appropriation of the 350K plus the 175K. And then it's the intent of the legislature for it to be included in the, whatever the numbers are for the next biennium
Yes.
after these 3 years.
Yes. Okay, and then to include also in there, the program on enhancing the tuition educational benefits. And I think what we're proposing is to include that funding for individuals to obtain a second degree and transfer of benefits to spouse or dependent in exchange for an additional service commitment. Do we need to specify that service commitment? Or is it in your rules and?
Mr. Chairman, I think we do need to specify the service commitment, and I think we'll do that when we draft the legislation. 6 years is where I think we're going to land.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, it's certainly the committee's total latitude on this, but I might recommend that we split the bills just in case one finds some goodness and maybe the other one doesn't, and that it all doesn't go down in one particular bill. I just put that out to how you think that might be accepted, but some people may find one more appealing than the other. And rather than kill the whole package, maybe two bills might be more tactically sound. Just a thought.
Any thoughts from the committee on having two bills instead of one? I'm good with two bills. I think that's the way we should go, and for the very reasons the general said. Mr. Co-Chair.
Mr. Chairman, I appreciate the general's thoughts there. I think there's a really good chance for one of the bills, and then the other bill has a pretty sizable appropriation, and we know how difficult that is. So the educational benefits aren't quite as big of a price tag, and we probably could split them. I don't think it's a deal breaker either way.
Okay. Got that, Heather? Okay, and those will be.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
They'll be ready for November.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, and you'll work with the military department on wording and all of that. Okay. Okay, good. So I think that's the next topic. Oh, wait, I apologize. Is there any public comment? Having the public having gone away from the room. Is there any public comment? Anyone on virtual room? Okay, thanks. Public comment is closed. We've resolved that topic. Does anyone need a short break?
Yes.
Okay. 2:30. Come back by 2:30, please.
Here.
Yeah. All the better. All the better.
Okay, that's better. So we do have a draft bill on the active duty reform benefits provided. So Heather, if you want to join them, fine. Let's let Major Johnson walk us through this bill. Please.
Mr. Chairman, just want to make sure that we're clear on the agenda. I think there's one that we don't have a draft bill on that Major Johnson's going to talk, and that is gets after the insurance reimbursement. Then,
okay.
Then following that, we've got the three bills that Heather and Chris can go through if that pleases the chairman.
Wait, I guess, hold on just a
Yes,
second
sir.
then. Okay, we've got a medical insurance premium. Yeah. So then we go to these. My apologies. I got way out over the horse's head on this one. Yeah. So medical insurance premiums, and this again is just an update for the committee. Request for potential. Let's see, legislation. So which slide should we be at? I'm on page 20, 25 of the one I have.
Yes, sir, 25.
Okay, so that's where we are for everybody's benefit. Page 25, it starts at the top, state active duty reform issue 1. So I guess Major Johnson, you've been elected for this one.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Please proceed.
Mr. Chairman, committee, good afternoon. I'm Daniel Johnson. I'm a major in the Wyoming Military Department. I want to thank you for your time. So as you can see in the slide in front of you, state active duty. As National Guardsmen, we're unique, as you know, in that the fact that we also report to the President of the United States on federal missions, but we also report to the governor on state active duty missions. With that, state active duty, it gets confusing because state active duty really is 1 day of active duty where we come on a drill weekend. A UTA is 1 day, but you do 5 UTAs on a drill weekend. So it's a little different in pay. But the other thing that occurs when soldiers respond to these state missions on state active duty, they'll incur a debt from their civilian insurance, whether it's Blue Cross Blue Shield or TRICARE Reserve Select, because a lot of those individuals have a full-time job that money goes to their premiums while they're working. But on state active duty, these businesses won't cover that premium because they're not working for their business. So in order to eliminate that hardship incurred by those guardsmen that respond to those state active duties, members would benefit from reimbursement of individual medical premium or insurance premiums. And we presented this in May and went back and looked at numbers and would like to make, based off those numbers you should see in there, 110. What we did is we took the TRICARE Reserve Select numbers, which each guardsman is eligible to apply for and get on the family side, which is $229 a month. And then single is $46 a month. And we took those premiums and did some numbers based off the missions that were supported in 20 and 21 for state active duty. And that's where our updated numbers come from based off those premiums. Now, on our recommendation, we are recommending $1 a day, but we'd like to update that and request for legislation and funding to reimburse our guardsmen for their individual monthly medical premiums at the TRICARE Reserve Select rates. With that, when they're on state active duty, which will come out to approximately $8 to $10 a day, and prorate that for each day that they're on state active duty.
Right. Questions? Okay, I know it's late in the afternoon. So just Major Johnson, just so I can clarify, the TRICARE monthly premiums, this is to reimburse guard personnel, or does it cover their insurance? What is that there? That's an easier way to look at it.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. So the TRICARE Reserve Select it's a health insurance that's provided to guards members. Based off that, those premiums are family at $229 for a family if they buy that. Now, they're not required to purchase that, but they're all eligible to purchase that. And that's why we use those numbers as our recommendation, because that is an available resource to those members.
So Major, it's just an equivalent number. Okay.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, if I could, everybody's got different insurance, Blue Cross Blue Shield, all that would be. So rather than trying to reimburse each individual based on their insurance costs, we just use the TRICARE Reserve Select because all guardsmen are able to do that. And that's comparatively inexpensive compared to other insurances. So that's why we use that particular number.
So with this one, would we need legislation to specify that for state active duty? When they're on state active duty, we'll reimburse $1 a day. $10 a day.
Mr. Chairman, yes, it would require, we would need legislation to let the military department spend state money that way. The $10 a day, actually, if the committee asks LSO to draft a bill for consideration in November, we're thinking that we use $10 a day as kind of trying to estimate the cost. But I think in the statute, in a draft bill, we would want to tie it to the then current TRICARE Reserve Select family rate and get away from that number so that, again, so we future proof the language in the statute.
Right.
But we use $10 because it's actually $8 and something cents. We were just trying to figure out the $110,000 per biennial fiscal year, what that number would look like.
Mr. Chairman,
Senator Pappas.
and frankly, the bill is not gonna, the bill may reference $10 a day, but the bill will have a fixed appropriation. It's gonna be whatever we say, 110,000 or whatever it is. And then they're just gonna have to work within that budget. So it's gonna be a fixed appropriation.
Correct. Representative Henderson.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a point of clarification. If I heard you right. So you're saying that this $10 is approximately what it costs for Reserve Select TRICARE. Is this an option for participants who are in the Guard? I mean, like I use the active duty model. So when you're on active duty, you have SDLI, and then there's a COBRA provision for transitioning to the private sector. And we seem to be working on a hybrid here of going the other way periodically. And so I guess my other question is, how many people are involved in the 110,000 figure?
General?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Henderson. So the intent would, just to go back a little bit, we saw a lot of state active duty missions in support of COVID is what really got us thinking through this, and initially came at us as sort of a low priority for the military department. But actually the committee was very gracious and said, hey, you really need to think about this a little bit more. So that's the purpose of it. If I understand the question that you asked correctly, it's any of our Guards members can apply for TRICARE Reserve Select. That is an insurance, a health insurance plan that they're eligible to have. And so we use that, like I said, is sort of the benchmark. So we wouldn't have to look at everybody's different insurances. The intent being that when they go on state active duty, they leave their civilian employment and they incur a debt with their medical insurance with their civilian employer. This would cover that debt as we go forward. And that's why we use that particular one, if that answers the question.
Follow up.
I have a follow-up question. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thanks for that, General, but how many people? So I don't believe that $10 a day covers private sector insurance. I find that hard to believe.
It doesn't. General?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, that's correct. It wouldn't. It really depends on how many folks we put on state active duty. The last 2 years, it's been a significant amount. Prior to that, we periodically do it. Major Johnson, I think you've got some numbers that talk about the particular.
I do, sir.
Major, continue.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Representative Henderson. So some numbers just to give some clarification. If you talk last year with COVID, obviously a significant muscle movement and a lot of state active duty where we responded to COVID mapping, hospital support in Cheyenne, Gillette, Casper, Rock Springs, or Casper, Rock Springs, and then the capital support. That equated to roughly 56 soldiers on approximately 30 total days of active duty support through those missions. If you look at this year, we had a winter storm medevac standby with 3 soldiers for 6 days. Lingle Canal Breach, which was 3 soldiers for 3 days. Gem Lake Fire medevac support, 5 soldiers, 23 days. Sugarload Fire medevac support. And then just even more recently was a search and rescue, which I believe we talked about earlier, which equated to 1 day of support. So it fluctuates based off the given year, and we took an average to look at that total number.
Representative, follow up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. How many people correspond to the average? What's your average number of people that you do per day?
Major, do you have a number, an estimate?
Mr. Chairman, I can get you a number real quick.
Mr. Chairman, if I could,
General?
I think I was tracking with you, sir, until you're looking for how many folks we put on state active duty annually?
Mr. Chairman, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative?
So what I'm trying to clarify, to make sure that we're on the mark here. It sounds to me like we're really under the mark because of the average. I mean, if I go back to, if I'm working for a private company or even the state, and I pay so much a month in my premiums. Now, the $10 per day option or possibility is something that's going to pay back towards that. But I don't think it's going to become near to keep it in effect while I'm on active duty. I used to work for the railroad, and I mean, I would go back to them periodically and reinitiate my health insurance for my family. And that's what I'm worried about, is that we may be unintentionally setting ourselves up to make it think, well, we're doing something, but maybe we're not doing what we need to do.
General?
Mr. Chairman, I think, again, if I understand correctly, what I think that you were saying is, hey, listen, the insurance out there is going to cost an individual more than $10 a day. Yeah, and we don't want to lapse. I think that's true, but I think our point is that all our guardsmen are eligible to get TRICARE for life at a reduced cost, that we want them to do that anyway. And to reimburse for more than that really is difficult to estimate based on the individual. And like I said, they do have the opportunity to take advantage of TRICARE Reserve Select if they want to. So that's where our head was at when we picked that number and that particular insurance program, if that makes sense.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator McCune.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to clarify what I understand is this, and maybe it'll clear everything up for everybody else. They get full TRICARE coverage for $229 a month, $8 and some cents a day. So my question would be, of the guardsmen you have that don't have that insurance, what are the percentage do you think the people who don't have that insurance are getting employer provided insurance? And the ones that have no insurance are still paying about $10 a day, and they're getting, I think the TRICARE Reserve for Life is just as good as TRICARE for Life, is it not? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. General?
Mr. Chairman, Senator McEwen, yes, sir, I think so as well. It's difficult to do that because we bring different people on state active duty all the time, different, in different statuses. And I can only tell you, 110,000 is probably way over an estimation of what's going to be needed for the folks we have here, because this is only if they don't have TRICARE Reserve Select that we're reimbursing them. We just use that number as our mathematics, if that makes sense.
Senator Anderson.
Mr. Chairman, I did the math on this at $300 a month for that $10 a day. That's $3,600 a year. This is biennial, so it's $7,200. And if you divide that into the 110, it's 15 full-time people, which, like you say, may be more than we need, or maybe about right. I don't know, but 15 could be signed up every month for this at that rate. Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Smith.
Senator Anderson, a few points to clarify. You're right. I mean, the way state active duty typically works, we're not thankfully a hurricane state where we put people on state active duty for months at a time in consequence management. Most of our things are localized flooding, hailstorms, fires. They're short duration periods of state active duty for sometimes dozens of people. So we would never, well, we've never experienced a state catastrophe that has required anybody to stay on for very long or a large number. COVID was as close as we got to that, where we had several dozen people for several months. I did, so hopefully, so Senator Anderson's numbers sound about right. It's hard to calculate how you, because we're talking about people per day, not so much people total, because it's the number of days of state active duty for however number of people. I did have two things I wanted to clarify though. There was a comment from Senator Pappas about an appropriation. This would be an additional cost to the state emergency funds for bringing guardsmen on state active duty. There wouldn't really be a separate appropriation. It would just be an additional cost. When you bring 10 people on state active duty to deal with the consequence management, that is essentially paid for by the emergency management that the governor's office in Lowe's runs. So it wouldn't require a separate appropriation. It would just be an additional cost to the state for state active duty.
So, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Pappas.
So then what we need is just an authorization. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Pappas, the bill would allow us to bill the state for that reimbursement and to pay state money to our individual members. Two other things to clarify. Sorry, I'm being too much of a lawyer maybe, but in answer to Representative Henderson's question about we're not reimbursing the total cost of some people's employer provided monthly costs when they go on state active duty. And that is right. We're just saying they could, most of them could do TRICARE, Reserve Select. It has that minimal cost. We're just reimbursing up to that. It doesn't fully make them whole if they're paying into the railroad healthcare system. It just helps them. Second point along those lines, there is one group of guardsmen who are not able to participate in TRICARE Reserve Select. And that is our dual status Title 32 technicians that are both guard members and federal employees. They have to participate in the federal employee health benefit, which is over $1,000 a month for a family. It's not cheap. It's good insurance, but it's not cheap. So it's more akin to a private employer's insurance plan. So those 200 and something federal technicians, two of whom are in the room and reminded me that they don't able to participate in TRICARE Reserve Select. I just wanted to make that clear to the committee. So really what we're talking about here is helping defray the cost of our members volunteering to be on state active duty to help the state in its consequence management. So we're not fully reimbursing them. We're just trying to help.
Other questions? Okay. Committee, what do you think? Well, any public comment? There's no public. Anyone on virtual? Okay. Close public comment. Committee?
Chairman.
Senator Pappas.
I would move that we ask Kelso to draft a bill that it would allow the authorization for the guard to be able to pay the premium medical premium benefits to the state active duty, or to the state active duty members who go on state active duty out of their whatever fund emergency fund that they pay.
It is
So
an
it's an
authorization bill
authorization
for the funds. Okay.
Second.
Seconded by Senator Anderson. Okay. Committee, do you understand the bill, motion for a bill? Okay. All right. Okay. Senator McCune.
Mr. Chairman, I would also agree with him. I would tie it to the daily premiums of TRICARE Reserve versus actually putting a figure in there. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. And I think that'll also be a may, not a shall, to give discretion to the department in order to those who, there are some companies who are going to tell their employees, fine, you go, we've got you covered. Others who are going to say, hey, you got your job when you come back, but you aren't getting paid and we aren't contributing to your benefits. So, okay. Heather, do you have that? All in favor? Say aye. Aye. Heather?
Mr. Chairman, I didn't know if you wanted to specify a particular fund or that it should come out of, or either, and by that I mean general fund, but I also mean out of any particular aspect of the military departments. Which is,
We'll
not
let you
wages,
work with Mr.
notes.
Smith on where the money needs to
Okay.
come from. Because I forget the name, the actual name of that account
okay,
that is used to, in effect, backfill on emergency deployments and that sort of thing. Although Major Johnson might have the answer to that one.
No, Mr. Chairman, I did not.
Would you care to explain insurance premium calculations?
I could break them down for you if you wanted, Mr. Chairman.
You did fine.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
For all of you, if you recall, this is the first time Major Johnson has testified in front of the committee. He was a little nervous, I think.
Yes, I was.
So
Mr.
I have to
Chairman.
give him some good natured kidding on that. Yeah, you did fine. Good, we're happy. All right. Continuing, I guess now we are at LSO or 23 LSO 0007.
this is a word.
Enhanced 007.
Yeah,
Oh, this is.
these bills, Mr. Chairman, 007. The bill is about the professional malpractice liability insurance. It modifies an existing statute. This is such a complex bill. It's going to
Mr.
take both
Smith.
of us.
So Major Johnson isn't going to explain this one?
Sir, I think he's run away. But anyway, so I'll introduce it and you can kibitz.
Okay, you go ahead.
I feel like we're a comedy routine.
Okay.
somehow. So 23 LSO 0007. If you'll recall, we briefed as part of our interim topic review of the statutes that were wanted to expand the existing professional malpractice liability statute found in 199402. This bill is a 2-page bill in front of you. The real meat of it is on page 2. As we briefed last meeting in May, currently the state statute, which is a great thing that not every state has, but most have something. The state shall defend, hold harmless, and identify any attorney or doctor of medicine from basically getting sued for any financial loss resulting from them operating on behalf of the Guard. This has been something that was called to my attention by a nurse practitioner because they're not a doctor of medicine. So what Heather and the LSO folks, I was saying medical provider, but they found healthcare provider, which is already defined in statute in 1-1-103B1, which is the civil procedure guide for suing people. So it made sense.
1-what?
1-1.
1-1-130, subsection B, healthcare provider means a person who is licensed, certified, or otherwise authorized or permitted by the laws of the state to administer healthcare in the ordinary course of business or practice of a profession.
So anticipating some of the questions, I had one question from one of the committee members last May. So what does licensed and certified mean? So I just did a quick tour of what's really in Title 33, which is all the medical licensing and privileging. So the Board of Medicine licenses doctors of medicine, doctors of osteopathic medicine, and physician's assistants. The Board of Dentistry licensed dentists. We have all those in the military. The Board of Nursing licenses registered nurses, advanced practice registered nurses, licensed practical nurses, and certifies CNAs and nurses aides. So that's why you have both. And we don't have CNAs and nurses aides, but we certainly have a wide variety of nurses within our ranks in the Guard. The Mental Health Professionals Board licenses clinical social workers, professional counselors, marriage and family therapists, and addiction therapists, and certifies people in all three of those realms who are something less educationally than those licensed. So we have a number of providers beyond doctor of medicine, which our current statute says. We have dentists, doctors, physician assistants, several types of nurses, licensed practical nurses, social workers, all within our ranks, all of which could be operating on behalf of the state of Wyoming in a given emergency. So that is the basis of this major change in the bill, which really just broadens the existing professional liability insurance. And we keep the attorneys in there too, because that's important to me. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll stand for your question.
Questions? Yeah, I've got a question. Okay.
So
Mr.
just,
Co-Chair.
just real quickly to the two attorneys sitting in front of me. Who's going to throw rocks at this? It might be those from your profession. Did you think about that or talk about that?
Mr. Smith.
Mr. Chairman, Chairman Landon, I did think about that a little bit. I hope it's a fairly simple thing and it's an existing statute that's always been in place. I am unaware of any lawsuit that's ever involved a Guard medical provider. So this is really cleaning up the statute for what is practically what we do nowadays in terms of the number of different providers we have. But it's always possible, sir, when you get a room full of lawyers, you never know what might happen.
Senator Pappas.
There's the joke. There's.
Mr. Smith, might it be advisable that we, if we're gonna put in medical folks and attorneys, we might put in engineers and architects?
Mr. Smith.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Pappas, I know why you're asking that question. We do have civil engineers. We have had architects in our ranks. We certainly could. I was staying within the spirit of the current statute, which was doctors of medicine and attorneys, but certainly the draft bill's in front of the committee, and we could certainly amend it to include any other licensed professional. I'd have to think of, Heather would probably have to go back and find what language to use for that.
Chairman,
Senator Pappas.
I really do think you ought to cover all of them. Whatever in the ranks, if they're going to be working in their professional capacity for the state, they ought to be afforded the same coverage.
Mr. Chairman, Senator
Mr.
Pappas,
Smith.
despite my long affiliation with you over the years, I did not think about engineers and architects. I am unaware of any CPAs
Barbers.
as
Mr. Chairman, committee, it seems as though I don't know if they're anywhere in statute, but certainly we'll find it if it's there, some sort of overarching professional definition. But if not, then it may be prudent to list some of these professionals. Then whenever we have a list, we're always in danger of perhaps omitting some. But that's why some sort of overarching, so I'm wondering, and one of the first places I think it might be helpful to look is in Title 33, which are the licensing, professional licensing statutes, and there may be some sort of definite, some sort of broad category that we could say along the lines of professional licensed under the laws of this state, or under a professional licensed under Title 33 of the state, or something like that. But we would just need to go back to the drawing board and not make a decision on the fly right here.
Mr. Co-Chair.
Mr. Chairman, Heather just took the words right out of my mouth, that final statement, which is, I would strongly recommend that we don't knee jerk this afternoon. That whistling sound might have been the bill falling out of the air if we get this thing too far out of the realm. So, I mean, I don't necessarily disagree with the senator, but I think the broader you get this, the more difficult it will be to carry it on through. So
I tend to agree with that. Mr. Co-Chair. However, let's allow Heather, Mr. Smith to look at those things and we can bring this back in November. I mean, what we thought of as a simple change and I'm familiar with all those licensing boards and everything else because that was my assignment on appropriations and there are, I believe, 80 some of them. There are a lot and a lot that I frankly would not care to include in this for a variety of reasons. Mainly that it'll cause the bill to fail, but well,
Sure. You don't have any time for that?
yeah. Barbers are licensed professionals. Okay, so that, I think we will table this, allow staff and department to work on that issue and be very cautious about who gets included. And bring it back in November, Mr. Co-Chair.
Let it be noted that it's a former general that put you guys back to work. So just so.
Yeah. So, okay, that covers that bill. As much as I really would have wanted to get that done this time. Yes, okay, I believe we have one more bill, 32 LSO 110010, military leave for state employees.
Yes,
And
Mr.
again,
Chairman.
it's a nice, clean, one-page bill with one deletion. There's no additions, and we should be able to get this done in the next hour and a half.
Mr. Chairman, exactly right. It's a two-page bill. The real language is on page 2, lines 4 and 5. What we have in 1911-108, the state very graciously allows state employees 15 days of military leave. That's in A. It's in personal leave, basically for military purposes. And then in B, it talks about how if you're going to be a member of the National Guard of any state or component of the military, if they're going to go on an extended period, they're allowed a leave of absence. So essentially they don't lose their job. What was interesting, it was brought to our attention in the interim, this language on lines 4 and 5 that required a 1-year employment with the state before they could go on a leave of absence for military duty. That was strange. It had never really come up. We'd never thought about it. The couple of agencies we work with fairly often who have many employees who are Guard members, nobody's really been enforcing that and basically firing people if they leave for longer because if they were a new employee. So this bill simply strikes the 1-year prerequisite to getting the leave of absence. In order, as many of you are probably aware from all our conversations over the years, when a new Guard, when somebody joins the Guard and they may be a state employee, they come to Wyoming, they get a state job, they join the Guard. We often will send them to basic military training and then follow that up with some kind of tech school where they're awarded their specialty. The tech school to get in itself is weeks to months long. So if they're a new state employee, technically they've abandoned their job under the existing statute and could be fired, even though we don't give them the alternative. We order them to go to the tech school. So what this bill does is take away that 1-year prerequisite. Both Heather and I reached out to Director Bach at A&I to ask the question, does A&I care? Do they have any concerns we're missing in taking out this? And unfortunately, we have not been able to hear from Director Bach or the HRD director, Aaron Williams. But what we would ask of the committee is consider adopting the bill. We will continue to work, getting a hold of A&I and discussing the issue. And we can report back in November if there's any issues with the bill. Or you can set it aside. Obviously, it's what the committee wants to do, but it's a really simple bill. With that, I'll stand for the committee's questions.
Okay, any questions? Okay, none. All right. With that, I'll ask for public comment. Anyone from the public in the room or virtual? Okay, with that, I'll close public comment. So committee, okay, bill's been moved by O'Hearn, seconded by Anderson. Okay. Committee, any discussion? Any amendments? Question having been called.
Senator Anderson.
Aye.
Senator Furphy. Senator McEwen.
Aye.
Senator Pappas. Representative Baker. Representative Burt. Representative Henderson. Representative McGuire.
Excused.
Representative Obermueller. Representative O'Hearn.
Aye.
Representative Ramiro Martinez.
Absent.
Representative Stivar.
Aye.
Chairman Burkhart.
Aye.
Co-chairman Landon.
Aye.
12 ayes, that passed.
Okay, thank you. I believe with that, we have wrapped up our business for the day. Mr. Co-Chair, am I missing anything?
Mr. Chairman, we'll take just a few minutes to hear from Heather, who can recap for us, but I also wanted to mention to the committee that you might want to please block out the afternoon of November 1st. We are scheduled to meet the 2nd and 3rd of November for our 3rd meeting. We have pushed enough work forward that we may have to go on the afternoon of the 1st. That may allow us, Mr. Chairman, to get done a little bit quicker on the 3rd, but
Be
so
great.
be it.
Yeah.
I think, committee, we may have to pull everybody in on November 1st. So I would ask that you please block that out and be prepared for that. We've got several bills that I think are worthy of our consideration. So, Mr. Chairman, I would also just recommend that and inform the committee that you and I will put our heads together, probably wait until after that 3rd meeting, but ask our staff to help us with some communication to the appropriations colleagues that we have.
Yes.
There are some issues that came up during this meeting that I think we would want to solicit their support for, our highway troopers, our National Guard, et cetera. But so we'll work on that, committee. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Right. So with that, Heather, do you want to run through all the work we've deferred and given you and all of that, please, for the committee?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. This meeting, the committee chose to sponsor 9 bills. 3, 5, 6,
More
7,
or-
9 more bills. And they are the ones that the committee elected to sponsor during this meeting was the ORV safety and equipment, benefits for spouses of deceased law enforcement, state employee moving expenses, lightweight trailers, but you will be looking at that in November to see how that amendment worked out. Alternative contracting, airport districts, veteran designation on driver's license, Wyoming National Guard. Oh, no, not that one. That one moved. Sorry. Military leave for state employees. So those are the 8 bills the committee elected this meeting. In May, recall that the committee elected to sponsor Space Force amendments and telecommunicator cardiopulmonary resuscitation. Now, to be considered in November are this Wyoming National Guard professional malpractice bill, a new Wyoming National Guard insurance premium payment bill, a new education benefits transfer to spouse or dependent bill, a new recruitment and retention bill. Oh, that is actually, that was when it was going to be 1, but that got split into 2. Excuse me. I apologize. Didn't update my notes here. Okay, so those were both recruitment and retention, but they're 2 bills. The committee has elected to also in November, a WyoLink standard budget item appropriation new bill, a WyoLink trust fund new bill, HOV lanes and enforcement new bill. They pushed county gravel roads, child safety restraints, winter road closures, and ORV operation to November. The committee also pushed 2 license plates bills, the community, one to support community colleges and one to support organ donation, and a new bill about driver's license photos, and a new bill about rehiring retired officers for November. And also on the 1st of November, the only committee that is currently on the agenda or on the schedule is water. And it looks like there are not any members of this committee who are on water.
Thank you. Okay, Senator Anderson. What was that again, please? I think we have already done that. Each of you get 3 bills to present on the floor. I figured that out. Whether you want them or not.
Additionally,
Mr. Chairman, the only saving grace is that several of those bills, including the ones today, are one-word bills, some of them. And, just because we may not get to them during the session, I appreciate the committee's work in considering issues that are important to this world. So anyway, we'll cross that bridge as we get there. And some of these bills in November, we may choose to take them forward as individual legislators, and we can certainly do that too. So thanks, Mr. Chairman. Good job.
Heather.
Mr. Chairman, there are additional items in November that aren't bill drafts. For example, the committee specifically requested a crosswalk presentation, reports about EV progress, electric vehicle progress, information about some of those the 5-year funding programs from the IIJA. And the committee requested the white paper on the right-of-way thing, so there could be discussion there. Now there is the ORV part of that, but there could be a bill that comes from that, depending on how you and I work, Mr. Chairman, between now and then. And then there's also that may be it. But anyway, there are several things that aren't just bill drafts that the committee had intended to look at in November.
And then we'll have
Now I remember the specific information from the Veteran Skilled Nursing Facility about personnel. When they do their report that they would do anyway at that meeting, but.
And I think we also have the report on the YDOT computer system, but that's already there. That's a requirement that they quarterly report to us and to JAC. So we tend to forget about that, but I think they've remembered, and I think we gave them some specific instructions and guidelines on what we wanted. So committee, anything we've missed? Senator Pappas.
And also, if you want another report.
Oh, yeah, we love other reports.
Certainly, Representative Henderson and I could give you a short report on the Rural Usage Chart Summit, NCSL Summit that we attended. Some good information regarding the RUC we could share with you.
Yeah, I think that would be
It
a
wouldn't be
good
very
share.
long,
Yeah.
15-minute report.
Yeah, we'll plan on that. Yeah, that could be over a lot of, yes, we'll determine that as we go. That could be a mandatory after hours activity.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, okay. Heather, do you need anything else from us?
Mr. Chairman, I don't think so. I do believe we have all the vouchers and we should be set.
Okay, committee? General? Staff? Mr. Smith? All of those who've stayed with us all day. Mr. Battleborg, for whatever reason you're here.
Good luck to those two back
And
there.
good luck to the 2 candidates in the back who sat here. We hope you found this interesting and learned something. You're probably making some really great judgments about those you may be serving with. So, yeah, that's probably,
They're saying, whatever you do,
don't put me on transportation. Yeah. Yes, Heather.
I would be neglectful. Also, the committee requested quite a lengthy report from somebody at YDOT. Oh, the chief engineer about this road, an alternate route.
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
so
The
that would
main
also be
reason we
November.
came here and we forgot it. But we've been working diligently on everything else. So, okay, with that committee, we're adjourned.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And I know a lot of you have